A new season, new players, new moments, new managers, new signings, but certainly not new referees. That's for sure. This is today's Arsenal Transfer Show. Hello and welcome to the Gooner Talk, or apparently to Sean Dyche starting the show this morning with how gravelly that was. But good morning to you all. Thank you so much as always for tuning in. As you'll see, I am in different surroundings this morning, so I hope you'll forgive the audio differences, and it's not going to be as clean and as crisp as what it usually is. So forgive me for that, but I don't have my usual microphone and camera and so on and so forth, but you've been seeing these surroundings before, so it's not entirely surprising to you, but yeah, this is unfortunately what you're gonna have to do. I need to get kind of one of those little travel microphones really to improve things, because I could be in anywhere this season depending on where Arsenal get in the Champions League, fingers crossed. So let's probably try and sort that out at some point. But good morning to you all. Thank you so much as always for joining me in the chat box. Really appreciate you tuning in and listening, and thank you so much for doing so. Good morning to Brendan and Steve, James. We've got Jamil, we've got Rowan, we've got Paul, we've got other Paul, we've got Brian and Amesy in the chat. We've got Andy and Knowledge, we've got Granddaddy Gooner, we've got Dave, we've got Chinora, Maximius, we've got Rich, we've got Evan, Claire. Good morning to you all. Thank you so much as always for tuning in. Thank you all of you, of course, who've also dropped a like on the video yesterday. There was a great comment from Gooner Works, I think it was. He's always an excellent contributor to the comment section. Always makes me laugh that every single time we don't hit kind of the 1K everyday challenge, and I say that we've still got some work to do on the previous show, what tends to happen is that we go mad on the current show, which did happen. More than 2,000 of you liked yesterday's video, which is, it's ironic, it's fun, we love it. But thank you so much to everybody that continues to support the channel and supports the like challenge. And yeah, let's try and get that up to 1,000 today. And it shows, with a little push, that's all we need really to get people liking the video. So thank you to everybody for doing so. But just got to make it a habit. You click on the video, you click the like button, you sit back, you relax and enjoy it. It's a good habit to get into. Subscribe if you're new, of course. You're listening maybe for the first time. We do these every single day, 8 a.m., usually in more professional surroundings, we'll say, with the microphone and stuff. But do forgive me for that today. And let's jump straight into today's stories. We begin with Footy Headlines, who, of course, are kind of the go-to website for kind of leaks around club kits and information about what kits are going to be like. And I know that we're not even starting the 25-26 season yet, but we're already getting some information coming out about the 26-27 kits for the season beyond this one. And that suggestions are that next season, the 26-27 season's home kit, will be a red and kind of different shade of red. Now, if you know the Arsenal crest, of course, the current Arsenal crest is obviously split down the middle, and there's two shades of red on the Arsenal badge, and so maybe that's the inspiration behind this. But yeah, crazy that we're already getting kit information about next season. Kits are planned very, very far in advance, so it is definitely realistic. But again, these are just rumours, it's worth pointing out at this stage of the day. We'll move into transfer news, I think, first, before we go into kind of the actual football that was played yesterday, and giving us some information about what we can expect from some of our rivals, and also some of the information that's come out from it from a transfer perspective. But Oleksandr Zinchenko has been linked quite heavily with moves across the board in Europe. The doc, of course, on X, doing some excellent work in finding and aggregating some of this news, aggregating it in the right way, I should add. Always does it professionally, and you can follow him on X at Carthy Cad Hagel. Of course, I'm sure most of you already do. But according to Il Mattino, which is a Napoli-based kind of reporting outlet, and they claim that Napoli are said to be interested in a move for Zinchenko. But there was quite a bit of noise around Fenerbahce as well, also being linked with a move for Zinchenko being linked with a move to Fenerbahce for next season. And Arsenal are thought to want, around 15 million euros, so just over around 12 million pounds for the player. And so if Arsenal can end up getting 12 million pounds for Zinchenko, and moving his wages off. Of course, Turkish clubs do have the capacity to pay quite big wages for players. We've just seen Galatasaray, of course, sign Victor Osimhen on a permanent move, and so therefore we are expecting the clubs to pretty comfortably pay for those wages, and so yeah, it's a move that makes sense, I think, for all parties. That Zinchenko be able to play under Jose Mourinho, and yeah, I don't think there'd be any issues there at all in kind of the wages associated with that deal. But it is one that still could yet cause Napoli to come in for the Ukrainian international. Furthermore, another player, of course, on the outskirts of Arsenal's plans right now, and according to Yanis Karinopoulos, of course, who is it seems a Greek-based journalist out there covering PAOK, of course, one of the big Greek sides out there. They are said to be highly interested in a move for Albert Sambi Lokonga, who has been, of course, playing more recently on loan with Sevilla and also with Luton. Sevilla did not take up that €11 million option in the contract to make that a permanent deal at the end of last season. And so it seems that clubs like PAOK, of course, who have done deals with Arsenal in the past, you might remember a certain Chuba Akpom, of course, did play for PAOK, and then, of course, kind of revitalised his career away from Arsenal. And while Arsenal didn't get much money, of course, for Chuba Akpom at that time, he did then lead him to kind of moves to Middlesbrough and then to Ajax. And currently this season, or last season, he spent time with Lille as well. So, yeah, Chuba Akpom is having a decent career following his move to PAOK from Arsenal. Maybe Albert Sambi Lokonga can also follow in the youngsters' footsteps as well. And Arsenal might be able to, fingers crossed, get some money through the door for Lokonga as well. But the big stories, of course, of yesterday were surrounding the big game that took place in the Community Shield. Eberechi, Eze and Crystal Palace beating Liverpool on penalties, 2-2 in the game. Really entertaining fixture, you have to say, highlighting some of the new players, of course, that Liverpool have got on their books. Palace haven't really made any transfers this summer. Their manager, of course, Oliver Glasner, has been pretty open and critical about the club's situation regarding transfers, the hope that they can get new players in, and the promise that if they don't, of course, and that if they lose players, they could have another false start, as they did at the start of last season. At the start of last season, a lot of people were kind of tipping Palace to be up there amongst the top 10, but because of the lack of transfer activity, they really did stumble in the beginning of the campaign. They had to kind of find momentum. But now they've started the season with another, in inverted quotation marks, trophy with the Community Shield and beating Liverpool on penalties. There were goals, of course, in the game for some new players that we've become familiar to. Hugo Ekitike opening the scoring before Jean-Philippe Mateta scored from the penalty spot. Jeremy Frimpong then scored a very strange goal. And when it comes to kind of cross-come shots, I don't really know any that I can remember as kind of strange as that one. But Jeremy Frimpong getting off the mark. And then Ismail Assar found an equaliser after a spell of Palace pressure. No extra time. The game went straight to penalties. And yeah, I thought we'd had our penalty shenanigans from the Women's Euros in the summer, but certainly it seems that penalty shenanigans have not finished, because Liverpool really failing to score their pens. Mohamed Salah firing way over the bar from his first penalty. A few good saves, of course, by Alisson and, of course, by Dean Henderson. Ebere actually missed his penalty in the game, but Ismail Assar very comfortably scoring his. And then Devaney, youngster at Palace, absolutely smashing in the winning penalty at the end of the shootout to give the shield to the FA Cup winners of last season. So, yeah, it was a game that then saw Steve Parish, of course, one of the very much higher up execs, chairman, I believe, at Crystal Palace, speaking afterwards to haters who he did an interview with. And he was asked about the likes of Eze and Mark Guehi, of course, as well. And he said, players come and go in football, in clubs. It's a life cycle. Hopefully, he's still here. That's what I'd like, but we'll see. Now, we know that Steve Parish has always been kind of very open in talking about the potential of a player like Eze moving on. There is a recognition, I think, of his age bracket at 27, meaning that if they are to get kind of a significant price tag, this summer is probably the best opportunity, if you like, for Palace to make a serious fee. And that's why there's been a known willingness from Palace's side to do a deal and for there to be movement and some softness around the transfer figure of £67.5 million, which was the release clause that is believed to expire before the start of the Premier League season. Some people have reported the 1st of August. Some people have reported the 15th of August. But at this point in time, we are still a little bit unsure as to, how much in the end he would end up costing. But Arsenal, as we've talked about on the channel, we need to make sure that we're moving players out the door. We need to make sure that we're moving players to bring in funds and to give Arsenal some kind of freedom to spend, if you like, and giving them that ability to then reinvest. So that is the focus right now for Arsenal. As I've said, the move for Eze, as things stand right now, is quite unlikely, but that could change. It's not impossible. I just want to give a quick shout out to Charles Watts, who spoke about this on yesterday's show. But maybe one of you who listened to our show asked Charles a question in his Discord server about kind of the story that we talked about, the story that Sammy Mockbella talked about as well. And Charles also, of course, kind of validating that information that we've been discussing on the channel as well, that we're not saying that it's impossible that a deal would happen for Eze, but at the moment, until Arsenal move on some players, until they get players through the door, potentially even a player as high caliber as Leo as well, but we'd have to wait and see, that at this point in time, a move for Eze is more tricky, less likely, and is impacted by that renewal of the contract of Ethan Nwaneri as well. But let's wait and see what the rest of the window holds. And from that point forwards, of course, we'll be able to get a better indication about where Arsenal are at. Last little thing, of course, is this. Now, let me know your thoughts. Tell me if I'm just being hypersensitive around refereeing decisions, and in particular in games where Liverpool are involved. But I can't believe that Crystal Palace weren't awarded a penalty for this incident here. I genuinely, and I've seen some pretty nuts decisions in my lifetime, but I am shocked that we didn't see a penalty given for Alexis McAllister's handball. And for me, it was a handball. And I think Keith Hackett, the former ex-PGMOL chief, has kind of teared into the VAR. He says he couldn't understand either why they never, ever saw a penalty given in the game and why VAR didn't get involved in the outcome of the penalty either, and that it is a clear penalty. He says he doesn't understand it, was his wording used. So that's my view. That's the view of a former chief of the PGMOL, of course, both of us thinking that it's a penalty. Arms are in a natural position. Ball hits his arm. I just absolutely cannot understand why this wasn't a penalty. But I can see some of you in the chat box are disagreeing. Alex says not a penalty for me. And if anything, Alex McAllister made it easier for Sarr to chest the ball. It's not really about that. It doesn't really matter what happens to the ball after it touches Alexis McAllister's arm here. And I know that it did kind of allow Sarr to have a potential chance, but I can tell you for a fact that a penalty would be a bigger chance than the one that followed. James says definitely a pen. James reckons there is a natural position for a cheerleader, less so for a football. Anakin Skywalker in the chat says penal day this morning. D18 says obvious handball. VAR was worrying yesterday, says Julian. Lots of Stonewall penalties, lots of Liverpools in the chat box this morning as well. Yeah, it's a little bit of a frustration, but Ryan doesn't think it's a penalty. So again, we've kind of got some differences of opinion around whether or not this was a penalty. For me, I think it's absolutely blatant. The hand is in an unnatural position. It changes the direction of the ball. Yes, it does, of course, lead to Sarr getting arguably more control of it in the end, but it's definitely worthy of a penalty. And hands that are in a raised position that then the ball strikes, he's in absolutely zero control of where that, or knowledge of where the ball is. You have to give penalties for these types of handballs, in my opinion. If his arms were down, if his arms were in a natural position, if he won the ball maybe with his head first and then it went from head on to hand, then no. But this is just a blatant handball, in my view. And I think it sets a really bad tone for the start of the Premier League season, for what we have come to expect Outside of this, I think the other decisions that were made in the game were fine. The penalty to Palace in the first half, I think it was a penalty, and it was given, but this one wasn't. And also, there was arguably Alisson as well in the penalty shootout off his line. That was another controversial point from the game about whether or not Alisson did indeed jump off his line. It's very close. I'm not sure if the rule means you have to have at least 1 foot on the line. To me, it really does look like Alisson comes off his line before the penalty by Eze is missed, and it wasn't retaken either. So I don't really understand why it wasn't. It's quite close, but I don't feel like the VAR really did look into that enough. Be curious to see if there was other players taking penalties, what the outcome would have been. But Eze's penalty missed wasn't retaken, even though I think it probably was worthy of a retake as well. Concerning times for VAR, as usual in the Premier League. I was talking to I was at the pub before the game against Villarreal on Wednesday, and just saying hello to a friend of mine before I jumped into the Emirates, and we sat down and chatted to a couple of Arsenal fans that were there just before they go into the game. And we were talking about VAR, and we all agreed that we think VAR has overall made the game worse. If it was up to me these days now, I would absolutely just scrap VAR. I don't want it. I don't think it's used properly. I think if it was being used correctly, it'd be great, but it's not used correctly. It's not used efficiently enough. It's not used with the technology efficiently enough. Some of the rules surrounding VAR and its use are absolutely horrendous. And so I don't really want to see VAR in the game anymore. I've really grown tired and lethargic around the use of VAR, because it just is, it's ruining the sport. It ruins celebrations. It ruins moments of of clarity almost, that we think something is a penalty or not a penalty, and then it's overturned or not given, and it just creates even more controversy and worries. I think Ref Watch, the program on Sky, is not happening next season. I'm not 100% sure why it's not happening, or why kind of scrutiny of the refereeing calls is no longer happening, or what the story behind that is. But I heard that the Ref Watch show isn't happening next season. I don't know if that's 100% true, but that's what I heard. If it hadn't yet been cancelled or officially said that it wasn't happening, but that's what I heard. So we'll get less scrutiny of VAR next season, I guess, on high-profile platforms. No matter what you think of Dermot Gallagher and his views around VAR, I often disagreed with some of the things he said, and so did the people in the room. But there's scrutiny of the decisions of VAR seems very protected these days. Right, shall we go to part 2 and some of your questions and get it back to Arsenal? I think we should. Let's go to part 2, your questions and more, right after this. Right, this is part 2 of today's show, which means we're going to be jumping into the chat box and tackling some of your questions. So if you've got any questions you'd like to throw into the chat, now is the time to do that. So without further ado, let's jump into the chat and tackle some of these questions, shall we? Just a quick one from Aurelian. This is, do you support VAR? No, I don't anymore. No, it's not something I really want to see continue with us here. James joined up as a brand new member today on the channel. Thank you, James. James Sutton joins us as a brand new member on the channel. Thank you, mate. Very much appreciate your kind support. Pete dropped in a little £1 donation as well. Thank you, Pete. Thank you for your kind generosity. And Kirill, who's been a member now for 9 months, says, I love you all, even the trolls. Thanks, Tom. Yeah, I don't know if I go that far, but we appreciate the love all the same, Kirill. Thank you, mate. Stephen says, any new news regarding Rodrigo or Lookman? No, if there was, I would have included it in the first part of today's show, but nothing new on that scenario. Joe says, any news on Saliba's extension? I've been seeing all kinds of posts floating around on X. What I'd say to people is I'd really recommend you stay within the bounds of who we know are reliable online. There are accounts that I think, try to generate a following and then try to generate kind of credibility. And we've talked through this before. We talked through this before about the idea of guesswork in the world of transfers, in the world of media. We've done it before where we've, in years gone by, we've sat down and tried to predict what might happen in terms of random transfer links, and we've ended up getting them spot on. Do you remember when we did the whole Hector Bellerin to Inter Milan after Ashraf Hakimi left Inter? We were like, just wait for those links to start. It's never going to happen. Bellerin was never going to go to Inter, but just wait. And there are times where you can reliably, pretty reliably, like put your stock, put your credibility on the line regarding a story around a player. Now, Saliba's future, to my knowledge, Arsenal have not yet agreed a contract extension with Saliba. That's not yet the case. But they are continuing those talks. Those talks are moving in a positive direction, to what I'm understanding. Arsenal are very calm about Saliba's future. They're very calm about Saka's future. And even though there is interest, as we know, from clubs like Real Madrid, the player, having asked him myself about his future, he said that he's very happy. We heard, of course, those comments during pre-season. I think obviously he was kind of put on the spot in those situations, so I don't know how much we can take those comments into legitimate kind of feeling. He was put on the spot in kind of a moment in the mix zone. It's fair asking the question. He said what he said, and it goes on record. And I would say that he did then speak after that kind of interview with AFTV in the mix zone, and said in a kind of an not off the record, but kind of off the mix zone media only kind of interview that that he's still hopeful, he's still happy at Arsenal. He's hopeful of a deal and stuff like this. So there is definitely some positivity around Saliba's future, but to my knowledge, no agreement yet. And if an agreement is found in the near future, it's not because of any reports you've seen so far. If there is anything to report, you will have seen it from those that are indeed, very much genuinely in the know. Stephen says, any news? Oh, we've done that one, sorry. Jack says, with City selling Grealish to Everton and Savio potentially to Spurs, I could see Rodrigo now going to City. Well, that's the thing, isn't it, Jack? They are moving on players. Players are moving. Grealish could be going. We don't know if that's happening yet, but he could be. Savinho to Spurs looks likely to happen at the moment. There's some talks going on between the two sides, but I don't know about how much, if at all, Grealish is going to cost. See if I can scroll down a little bit, see if there's anything. I thought it was more of a loan that was being talked about. Yeah, it seems that it's a loan deal rather than a permanent deal. So I don't know how that would free up funds, but there's suggestions that he will be joining Everton on loan. Don't know how much that will cost Everton, though, in terms of a loan fee. But yeah, you could potentially see City maybe making a move for Rodrigo off the back of that. Would be a good signing for them. Certainly a better replacement than Savinho. Certainly an upgrade on Doku. Can't say I'm the biggest fans of either of those two wingers, but Rodrigo's definitely a step up on those. Cheech says, is Calafiori one of our most important elements of attacking football? I mean, he proved that on Saturday that he can really help us, can't he? He really can be a benefit to how we attack teams, how we break teams down, how we kind of suffocate them, and also bring the ball into those dangerous areas. And I quite liked what I saw. I mean, if I had to choose between him and Miles Lewis-Skelly, if he's fully fit, I probably would go Calafiori based upon the performances that I've seen in pre-season. I think that's wouldn't be too far-fetched to say. AJ says, and thank you for the donation, AJ, VAR works in the World Cup, the Euros, and other top leagues. Why is it a failure in the Premier League? Either it's incompetence on part of the officials or it's fraud, allegedly, says AJ. I just think I've said this time and time again, the quality of the refereeing in England is just very, very poor in comparison to many, many others. Very, very poor. Matt says it's time to bring back the ITK rater. Yeah, we used to do this. We used to do an ITK rater on the show and rank kind of faceless, not always faceless, but mainly faceless kind of Twitter accounts that claim information. You probably saw some claims about Eze over the week, like that we've just seen go by. There's nothing there. There's no agreement there. There's nothing kind of between the clubs that's been agreed so far. So that could yet happen later in the window, but so far, it's just not for me. But yeah, I think, I remember we talked on the channel before as well, about this idea of Doku at Man City and Savinho at Grealish. Isn't it interesting that they're now looking at new wings? Do you remember we did the whole Havertz-Doku comparison? I got laughed at so bad for the whole saying Havertz is better than Doku, but I firmly stand by that. For me, Havertz is a much better player than Doku. I know they're different profiles, different positions, but just in terms of their footballing ability, Doku's a lot of show, no go for me, whereas I think Havertz actually gets substance to what he brings to the team. And Pete, thank you for your very kind donation as well. Says, catching the 8 a.m. has sat in Bournemouth Hospital after delivery of our gorgeous daughter and new Gooner, Enya Rose. What a nice name. Mum did amazing. So proud. Congratulations, Pete. And thank you so much for bringing a brand new Gooner into the world. Absolutely amazing. Thank you so much for the kind donation, and congratulations to you. I'm sure you're getting plenty of well wishes, I'm sure, in the chat box as well. Mazza says, to be honest, I'm not sure we need anyone else if we are to consider Nwaneri and Dauman as first team players. We have good cover for every position right now. What are your thoughts? If Arsenal don't bring in anybody else between now and the end of the window, my initial emotion will be disappointment. I really think Arsenal need to add that extra element to the attack. I think we need that seventh player. I think there's an ambition side of things that you need to look at the other teams like City and Liverpool and the work that they've done in the windows and could still do in the window. I think Arsenal need to push the boat out and get in that seventh player. I think that what we've done so far is good. It's really good. I'm really appreciative of the business that Arsenal have done so far. The striker, the winger, the defensive midfield. I mean, Zubimendi, what a signing. I really hope people are starting to realise how much of a positive impact he's going to have on the team this season. The depth that we've brought in across several other roles as well. From my perspective, Arsenal have done really well in the window, but to make it a no doubt successful window for me, we need to go and sign another forward, another attacking player, another option that gives us something extra too. Paul says, any truth in the links to Malik Fofana? Again, I've not really seen these links from anybody like wildly credible. Again, they kind of come from these faceless Twitter accounts. I've not really seen anything concrete. I know that word's kind of come up a bit in kind of satirical terms, but genuinely, I've not really seen anything from anybody with much weight to their name, let's say, talk about Malik Fofana. So, no. William says, Tom, why are you not proud of the exclusive Mayor TV? Is it because you're trying to play it? I never said I wasn't proud of it, William. I don't know where that's come from. I just said it was in that moment, walking through the mix zone. It's kind of it was kind of on the spot. So as I said, he was also in an interview. And to be fair, I think when we did the show when it happened, I think I gave massive credit to Curtis for asking the question. And I also think I gave massive credit to Curtis for asking the question in the press conference as well. So don't get it twisted, William, and don't twist my words. That's not what I've said at all. I just said it was kind of in the moment, on the spot. Yeah, it was like, I don't know if like in a setting where it was kind of like a back and forth situation, whether or not he would have been as committed as he's kind of spoke in that moment. But as I said, it was nothing personal. So stop trying to create drama where there isn't. Greenweather says, Tom, I finished Severance that you recommended. Season 1 was good, but season 2 was a bit meh. One thing that irks me is a lack of security. Only one guy walking ARD. Do you feel the same? Well, I'm glad you finished it. I mean, it's always difficult, isn't it, to kind of get a sequel series as good as the first. I still liked it. I think you're right. I think season 1 is a better season than season 2. But I think that I think that there's some plot holes. It's fair to say it's a difficult show to get absolutely spot on and without kind of any question marks associated with it. It's a brilliant program, though. Absolutely brilliant. Let's go down the chat a little bit more. Thank you, Sam. Says, do you think we only just replaced who we've lost? No, I don't think that's the case, Sam. I think that's a bit of an agenda-driven bit of drivel, to be honest, kind of put forward by people that just kind of always want to play down what Arsenal have done. Because you could make the argument that Arsenal have replaced the players that have left, but the reality is that when you look through the team, Kepa, upgrade on Neto. Mosquera, massive upgrade on Tomiyasu, not just because of his availability, of course. He's actually going to be available for us. But I think Mosquera is going to really surprise some people. Norgard's definitely going to be an upgrade on Jorginho for next season because Jorginho barely could walk at the end of last season. He was continuously injured. His availability was a question mark. And of course, his age bracket was beyond really what he was going to provide much to Arsenal. Norgard, I think, is a Premier League starter for a really impressive Brentford side last season. Norgard's going to bring more than Jorginho did. For me, Zubimendi is already showing why he's an upgrade on Thomas Partey for next season. Can't wait to see him play more in the campaign. Noni Madueke brings the quality and depth that we haven't had to Saka's position. Could even potentially bring some quality to the left-hand side. That's a bit of a surprise as well, which is really, really good. And then Gyökeres, he's not replacing anybody. He's coming in and adding. Jesus hasn't left. We've still got Havertz. We've still got Marino. We've still got Trossard right now. Gyökeres comes in and adds. I don't really kind of get the whole we've just replaced players we've lost. And then the ironic thing is, Sam, on top of all that as well, is that if you look at the squad for the game against Man City, as people keep pointing out, if you want to put Max Dowman in the squad, if you want to put some of these players in the group, you're going to have to leave some senior players out of the squad entirely because we can only have 20 players in that matchday squad. And we've got over 20 players that could potentially be in a matchday squad. So, I really don't necessarily think that this idea that we've only just replaced who we've lost it's trying to play down what Arsenal have done in this window. So yeah, I disagree, Sam. Is the short answer to that long answered question there. Amaral Gunner says, Tom, I agree with you. He was being asked several questions. There's not a chance that he would tell them he's signing before the club. Common sense tells you that. I think he was put on the spot. I think he kind of said something that I think as he was walking away, he might have regretted saying that, and it might have necessarily been reflective of what the scenario is right now. But Arsenal are calm about Saliba's future. It is moving in a positive direction, but there hasn't been an agreement at this point in time. But that could change in the very near future. We will wait and see. MJ says, I'm glad we have kept the spine of the team. Look at Liverpool, a lot of new players to settle in as well. I think you're absolutely right. Sesan says, good morning, Tom. If we don't get Eze and Zubi and Rice, or Rice gets injured, we are in great danger. What do you think? Well, if we don't get Eze and Zubi or Rice get injured, we have Norgard, we have Marino. These are players that can play in those positions. So we're only in trouble in the sense that the quality drops from those starting players, but most clubs will see a drop in quality. I'd love if we signed Eze. If we did sign him, we would be better prepared. I think you're absolutely right in that sense, but I don't necessarily say, I wouldn't necessarily agree that we are in great danger. That's why we have Marino. That's why we've signed Norgard. I think it's important to point that out. AJ says, fans are also forgetting that we need to give game time to Nwaneri, Max Dowman, Nichols, and other kids that are coming through, as this will help developing them and increase their value as well. Nichols, I'm less kind of sure about necessarily having kind of a definite future at Arsenal, but certainly Nwaneri and Dowman are more so likely than Nichols. Good young player, Nichols. I'm just not sure if he's going to be able to break into that senior squad. Daniel says, is the Eze deal unlikely now because it's too late in the window with the season starting soon? P.S. Didn't he smile when he was asked about it yesterday? Surely it's confirmed. Yeah, that obviously is like, it's so funny how media works these days, isn't it? Like social media in particular. Eze being asked about his future, he smiled in a video. Of course he's going to smile. It's funny. Like, it puts him on. We know, of course, from his side of things, he's really keen on the move. We've talked about that. We know the player is keen. We know that personal terms would not be a problem for Arsenal to do a deal for Eze. And it's more about kind of the Arsenal side of things than it is the Palace or the Eze side of things. So that's not what's stopping the deal. Eze is not stopping the deal. He would, I think, from what we understand, would be very happy to move to Arsenal. But it's not about waiting like too late in the window. I thought I saw a comment yesterday saying, were Arsenal right to leave their sales till late in the window? It's not a decision that Arsenal have made to leave their sales till late in the window. They've not decided to do that. You don't control when you sell players. Arsenal ultimately haven't received the offers earlier in the window for the players that they are happy to move on. And we did say that. I remember sitting here in June and July saying the players that we're talking about leaving the club, it's much more likely that they will move in August because they're just not players that are at the top of a lot of clubs' wish lists this summer. That's the reality. So you can't control when those players are going to leave. And as a result, you've got to be a bit conscious about the fact that other deals that you might want to get done, like Eze, they're more complicated. They're more likely to happen later on in the window. They're not as pressing because the other deals that we've done, Gyökeres, we needed to sign a striker. Neto, we had to sign a backup goalkeeper. Sorry, not Neto. Kepa, we had to replace Neto to be a backup keeper. Mosquera, we had to replace Tomiyasu. Norgard, we had to replace Jorginho, upgrade. Zubimendi, we had to replace Partey and upgrade. And Madueke, we had to bring in depth and quality competition on the right-hand side. And we've done that. But now we have 2 players in every single position of our starting 11. We are focusing now on moving players on, and then we'll see where we kind of are once we've successfully done that. And then there's a chance that we might see some players coming in, or a player. I think players, plural, will be very, very surprising. I'll be shocked if we brought in 2. But there's a chance that we could still bring in 1 more player. So let's wait and see if we can successfully do that. Ben says, I'm delighted with the window so far, but I really do think that we need to bring in an elite left winger. I've been a big supporter of Martinelli, but his end product isn't improving. Do you think that's realistic? I think it's only realistic that we bring in an elite level left winger if one of the 2 left wingers leave. More so Martinelli for like an expensive one. But for us to sign a left winger, one of those 2 are going to have to go. I just can't see it. I just have not heard anything to suggest that we would sign a left winger without moving those 2 players on. It's very, very difficult. Very, very, very difficult to see that happening. Samuel says, Tom, do you think that we always saw Odegaard coming on in the second half of games so that he could play with Dalman for Max's confidence and support? I mean, it's a really good theory. I think it was partly to do with fitness, but yeah, it's important to manage that. Kingley says Dalman can't play a lot legally in the Premier League. His minutes needs to be managed. He can play in the Premier League this season, but there are legislatory issues in the Champions League. He can't play in the Champions League until he's 16, which will be December. But you can play in the Premier League from the start of this season. You can play in the Premier League in the season that you turn 16. That's why Ethan Nwaneri could make his debut at 15, because he was turning 16 that season in March. Same for Dalman this season. He's turning 16 in December, so he can play in the Premier League this season. James says, of the traditional Big Six, which manager is most likely to be sacked? My vote is Maresca. That's a good question. I'd probably go Amorim. I feel like if Man United have a bad season after spending a lot of this money and still don't manage to break into the top half comfortably, I think he'll still be under a lot of pressure. He's had a season now. I think he's finishing, 16th or whatever it was, 16th, 15th without any silverware at all. I didn't know if that was enough to keep him in a role. I'm surprised he still is in a role. So after they've spent 200 million odd on, 3 forwards, if they don't improve, he could be in a lot of trouble. Enzo Maresca's just won the Club World Cup. I think Chelsea will be a factor this season. I don't think they'll be a title challenger, but I think they'll be a factor this season. So I think Enzo will be fine, probably. He's a decent coach. I like Enzo Maresca. I like him as a coach, not necessarily as a person, but I like him as a coach. So I think he'll be fine. AA says, some clueless Arsenal fans blame Arteta and Berta for not paying asking price for Eze and Gyökeres. What is going on with these fans? I know if it was up to some fans, we would have paid 100 million euros for Gyökeres by now. Patrick says, what's the deal with Trossard? All very quiet related to him. So I wonder if he's on the move. Oh, he's injured at the moment, Patrick. So we haven't really got any updates. We'll hear from Arteta in his first press conference this week. I'll be at the Shelby Royalty Training Centre, of course, to hear from Mikel Arteta a little bit later on this week. And I imagine that Trossard's status will be unveiled in terms of where he's at fitness-wise as well. Fuad says, Tom, do you agree on club stance that they are moving slightly away on the Eze deal due to the Nwaneri extension? I'm just worried if Odegaard is out long-term, asking an 18-year-old to cover long-term. You can't really do business around the potential of a long-term injury. It's just not something that really happens. And I know that we suffer long-term injuries, but it's never really something that you can plan for. Long-term injuries are unpredictable and they're rare in the broader context of a season. For specific players, they aren't too common. Most players won't have a serious long-term injury throughout their career. So you don't tend to see clubs planning financially for those scenarios because they aren't that common. We as Arsenal fans have been sadly subjected to quite a lot more, way more than average in recent seasons, but hopefully those law of averages will start to even out and Arsenal will benefit from not having to have so many, but they can't make a signing because of potential for a long-term injury. If Nwaneri has to step in for Odegaard for a long period of time in the number 10 role, I'm more confident of him being able to do that than I was him stepping into Saka's shoes. Because I think he's more naturally a central player. I think he'll be more successful in a central role, playing with Saka rather than instead of Saka. So I don't think that. Certainly, the Eze scenario has been impacted by Arsenal being able to renew Nwaneri's contract more so than we previously thought, definitely. But it doesn't rule it out entirely. But you can't do a transfer just off the idea that a player could be missing for the long term because it just you just can't. It's impossible to do that. Let's go to Jack says, Tom, who do you think will sign if we bring in one more player? I don't know. I genuinely don't know, Jack. I have absolutely no idea who Arsenal will sign. We know there's interest in Rodrigo. We know there's interest in Eze. We know there's interest in Gordon. We know there's interest in a lot of other players. I did say, I think, on a previous show, and I think I said it in a tweet as well, whoever we sign, I've got a weird feeling that it might be someone that we're not even talking about right now. That's not based on info. It's just a sense. I just get the feeling that might happen, that we could end up signing somebody that we've not yet even discussed on the channel. Gilbert says Tottenham signing Savio. Oh my days! I'm not like bowled over by this. I was chatting with Phil Costa this morning on X about this, and people seem to be surprised at the 50 million euro price tag. I'm not I don't particularly rate Savinho that highly. Similar to Doku, they're just not really my type of wingers. It's a lot of show, not a lot of go. He scored 1 goal in the league last season. That was it. He sits in the 5th percentile for non-penalty goals per 90 across Europe's top 5 leagues. That means that 95% of wingers playing in Europe's top 5 leagues scored more goals per 90 than Savinho did. So I'm not wildly fussed. I think he's a good player. I think, maybe he can work at Spurs. I'm surprised they're doing that deal. I thought they would bring in more of a natural replacement for Maddison. But I quite like Ebere more. I think Ebere is a really exciting player. I think he's got a lot more to him than the likes of Doku, for instance. And I think it was a really shrewd piece of business by Spurs to sign. Ebere really affected by injuries last season, of course. But Savinho has been at City for 1 season. It looks like they're going to make a profit on him, but he's not really kind of like that strong defensively. He doesn't work too hard defensively, Savinho, and Frank usually likes to have players that are working back and forth, up and down the line. So unless he's shown a willingness to be able to do that, it doesn't strike me as a big Thomas Frank type deal. So I guess we'll wait and see, but I'm not too concerned. I know you'll get Arsenal fans losing their minds over this, but I really don't think it's not something I'm too fussed about. I'd be more fussed about, Arsenal signing Savinho. I'm not sure I'd see that as the left winger that I'd want Arsenal to move for. I'd be much more concerned if Spurs were signing Rodrigo, for instance, as opposed to Savinho. Joe says you can just play Havertz behind Gyökeres as a shadow striker. You still have your wingers. It's a really good point. If Odegaard's missing, Havertz, as Dude says in the chat as well, Havertz could absolutely come in and cover. Gilbert says, Madueke or Savinho, who is better? Let's have a look at the numbers, right, from last season. That'll probably give us a good indication. So last season, Madueke ranked in the 66th percentile for non-penalty goals. Savinho ranked in the 5th percentile for non-penalty goals, as discussed. But Savinho is a more creative player than Madueke. Madueke is in the 30th percentile for assists per 90, whereas Savinho is in the 88th percentile for assists. So it depends what you want from your wide players. I think the biggest criticism of Martinelli and our left-hand side in particular is that they don't score enough goals, that we don't get enough goals from those areas. So if you want more goals from a wide player, then Madueke is your player, as opposed to Savinho, you'd probably say, based off of last season's performances. He did score more goals for Girona in his season there. He scored 9. But even before that, didn't score any goals for PSV in the senior team, in the league at least. And, he's not a regular goal scorer. He's not a big goal scorer. He's played 101 games in his 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 seasons. And he's scored 13 goals so far in 101 games, league games. That is so. Yeah, it doesn't necessarily stand out, does it? Whereas Madueke's played 124 league games, scored 28 goals in those 124 games. So, yeah, there's a bit of a difference between the two. Amberley says, why on earth are people caring about what Spurs are doing? As long as they're not signing any of our targets, who cares? Ashley says, listening to Parish yesterday and saying players come and go, and ideally he would love to keep Eze and Gehi, but have to wait and see. Yeah, we kind of covered that in part 1, didn't we? And he just strikes me as someone who'd be willing to do a deal if the money came in. But until that money comes in, there's no deal to do. Joe says, Tom, do you see us getting any loan signings in, or do you think that we learned a lesson with Sterling and Neto that restricts when you are desperate in January? I hope that we learned. I really hope that we learned that that we shouldn't use the loan market in the Premier League in the summer window. If we're looking for loans, we should probably look into Europe. But I know the Premier League tends to be where those loans can emerge when players aren't getting too many minutes. But still, I'm not necessarily confident that Arsenal will be using the loan market so effectively. But it's there. It's there if we need to. I think there's a small chance we could see a loan happen. But I think it's fair to point out that Liverpool and Man City, the teams that have won the leagues over the last few seasons, they don't tend to do loan deals. I know, especially for forward players. I know Liverpool have brought in your Artemellos and players like this in the past on loan, but they don't tend to bring in players on loan that are going to play a significant amount. And we really should have our squad, and we have a squad. I mean, again, I don't have to keep saying this over and over again, but we have 2 players in every single position of our starting 11. We just need that. I think we need one more attacking player at least to just push us that slightly bit further this summer. Carl says, Tom, can you please explain in a nutshell how percentile ratings work if it's easy enough to do? Yeah, sure. So if a player ranks in the 95th percentile for, let's say, non-penalty goals, it means that he is within the top 5%. So it means that 95% of players for non-penalty goals per 90 got less than that player. That's what it means. So if you're in the 95th percentile, you're in the top 5% of that metric. That's what it means. So goals, if you're in the 50th percentile, you're dead in the middle. Like there are 50% of players that are scoring more goals than you. There are 50% of players that are scoring as many or less than you. That's what percentiles means. So it's quite simple, but I get that percentiles aren't really something people tend to work in these days. But it's a really good kind of metric about comparing players to one another. Spearman says, so why not say top 5%? It's just not what it's just not what the system uses. It doesn't say it like that. It says percentiles. So that's what we tend to say. But I can change it to that if you like. I can do my best. Barnaby says, which Arsenal player do you foresee will play the most minutes this season? Probably David Raya or Saliba, but probably David Raya, I guess. Probably most likely to be him. Johnny says, question, do you think we have fell into a Laka Alba type situation with Marino and now Arsenal wanting to sign Eze? I don't think so. I think the Laka Alba situation was mental. Like we sold Alexis in January. We probably should have sold him in the summer. He was never going to sign a new deal. He didn't play particularly well. We probably should have sold him to Man City for that 50 million that we got offered when he had a year left on his contract. We probably should have sold him then and then reinvested that money better. We didn't. We'd signed Lacazette in the summer to be our new number 9. And then Alexis left in the January window and we spent 55 million quid on Aubameyang. a player who, yes, can play wide, but we all know is better as a centre forward. And it kind of made the Lacazette transfer pretty much null and void. So if you're asking that question around Marino and Eze, I don't think so. Eze is a 10. That is his best role. Marino is a box-to-box midfielder. That is his best role. So they are two different players. And they're not both centre forwards or both centre mids like Lacazette and Aubameyang are. Kirill's gifted another membership to somebody random in the chat. I wonder who that was. Let us know if it was you. Good luck to those who, of course, have already got them. But thank you to Kirill. Tizer says, did you see Alex's show where he shows that if we get Eze, we'll have 3 of the top 5 players from last year for carries and take-ons in Saka, Madueke and Eze? Does that solve a problem? It definitely makes us more penetrative, doesn't it? It makes us a lot more dangerous and better at kind of taking players on. So, I mean, Gyökeres, Saka, Madueke, Eze as a 4, that's got a lot of drive and speed and direct play, doesn't it? So I sincerely hope we sign Eze. I really do. It's just not one that's too likely at this point in time. We need things to change before that Eze deal becomes more likely. Roy says, Tom, in my opinion, the Gooner Talk is in the 95th percentile, actually the 99th percentile. Keep up the great work. Thanks, Roy. Appreciate your kind words, mate. Aoife says, Tom, what do you think it would take to get the squad to a level where Arteta does the Pep roulette thing? Doesn't have to be business for this window. I'm not sure if that's necessarily the style that Arteta would choose to have for the squad. He kind of likes his starting 11s, doesn't he? He doesn't necessarily like rotating too heavily. I think there are going to be some unpredictable moments this season. You've got Havertz as a big factor. You've got Madueke as a big factor. Mosquera and Kivior and Calafiori, Lewis Skelly, Timber White. We've got a lot of players that aren't guaranteed to start every single game. So I think we are in a little bit of that phase, but I think, there's still a lot that would need to happen before you're making every single player on the pitch unpredictable, which isn't necessarily the case for the likes of Haaland and I think Foden and Rodri. Even some of the defenders, of course, as well, have really gained traction in playing pretty much every single game. And the goalkeeper now, Ederson Trafford, that's going to be a very interesting kind of dynamic, of course, as well as Ederson comes towards the end of his time, I think, with City. Maybe this might be his last season. If not already, he could yet leave. But we'll have to wait and see. Right, let's wrap things up there. Thank you so much, as always, for tuning in. I'll be back with you in the usual surroundings tomorrow morning, wrapping up any of the information that's happened today. It is, of course, the week that the Premier League starts. Premier League football is back in action this weekend, and Arsenal take on Manchester United on Sunday. Mikel Arteta's press conference at the end of this week. All the build-up, all the news, all the latest transfer information to come. But stay safe, stay well, stay happy and respectful. And as always, up the Arsenal.